episode of Crippled by Culture, where we talk about everything in life and relate it to the disability and chronically ill community. My name is Sean Gold, and I'm an author, advocate, and nonverbal public speaker for the disability community. To provide a quick visual description for accessibility, I'm a Black man with a white tracheostomy breathing tube in my neck. I am wearing a gray shirt or a blue shirt, dark blue shirt. Next to me is the voice you hear speaking for me. This video is of a Zoom call with me and the person talking for me off camera, and my guest is in the other box below it. Today, I would like to thank Adam Ross for being my voice in this episode. In this episode, we are talking about the intersections of disability and accommodations.
Before we get any further into the interview, I want to give a shout out to our partnering nonprofit festival for the series, Festability. As a board member, I helped put together a wonderful event in St. Louis at the Missouri History Museum. We had so many activities and vendors set up all over with an amazing headliner for our main stage. Getting to do this event was a dream come true. It is the best event in St. Louis to celebrate your disability unapologetically. Make sure you come out later this year. More information will be available soon. Thank you Festability for sponsoring the series. Now, back to the show.
Now, let's get to today's amazing guest. Priya Ray became disabled in 1999. As a musician and artist that was and is part of a DIY community, she was an ally to minorities. She was shocked that she hadn't realized how we exclude disabled people until Priya had become disabled herself. That was when she decided to dedicate herself to cripping the world around me and bring everyone along for the ride. Priya, thank you for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you, Sean.
Absolutely. And would you mind giving a visual description of yourself, please?
Oh, no, not at all. My name is Priya. I am a brown-skinned woman. I have dark brown hair. I think I have glasses on the top of my head and a purple band on the top of my head. I'm wearing a black shirt with some white speckles in it, and that's it, I believe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. First, so we've already covered that you identify with having a disability.
Mhm.
Do you mind sharing what disabilities or chronic illnesses you have?
No, not at all. I had a spinal cord injury in 1999, and I don't really have any chronic illnesses. I had a T12L1 spinal injury, and T12L1 is the location on the vertebrae of where my injury was. And besides being paralyzed, I can't walk. I can stand if I have something to hold on to, but I use the wheelchair. That's the most productive way to live my life. And I do also have chronic pain due to nerve damage. And that's me in a nutshell as a disabled person.
How old were you when you got diagnosed?
I was 29 years old. I actually fell off a skateboard ramp, like a half pipe. Everybody knows what skateboard. So I fell off a half pipe, but I don't skateboard. I just went up there. It was at also a show space where my band had played, but my band was not playing that night. And I just went and, was hanging out with some friends up there. And there was like an empty space. I guess I didn't see it and I fell through.
Gotcha. Do you feel like there are other things going on that you feel are not diagnosed?
No, I mean, no, not really. I basically have a spinal cord injury. I'm 54 years old. So, I'm aging and that kind of stuff is happening. I'm a woman. entering into this menopausal time now. And so, things like that. And doctors don't have any diagnosis for the shifts in hormones and stuff in your body. So we just have to figure it along as we go, type of thing.
Right, right. Um, did you have to go through your own internalized ableism?
Hmm. That's an interesting question because I think about that a lot with myself. And my mother was disabled. She had rheumatoid arthritis, and I grew up with that, from the moment I was born. I never really knew a time where she didn't have arthritis. So when I had my spinal cord injury, I was very okay with the identity of disabled. I don't know, I didn't go through a moment where I was like, no, where I could deny what was going on. And there was always this like hope to walk because I had a lot of, when you have a spinal cord injury, it's different, just like any cerebral palsy, all these different disabilities, it's different. You have a different ability, and I don't know specifics about other disabilities, but with a spinal cord injury, even though I have a T12L1 injury, someone else that has an injury in the same spot could have totally different abilities because we don't really know how the spinal cord exactly got damaged, like how much got damaged or why certain things still have connections. So I was very lucky. I had 100% ability in my quadriceps, my glutes and my hamstrings. Not there's some strength there, but not enough to help me stand. And and my calves and ankles, not that much at all. So I have full upper body strength, and with my quadriceps, I actually had a lot of ability. So I could do all the things I did before, just in a different way. So I always just wonder if that wasn't the case. Maybe I don't know how I would have reacted, but I was pretty much like, okay, I can do everything I can do everything I did before. I just have to do it differently. I might have to crawl up the stairs like a dog or something, which is fine. I like dogs, so nothing wrong with that. But I don't feel like I experienced internal ableism. I feel like when I went out into the world, because where I did my rehabilitation was Shepherd Center, and that's when I first learned about the ADA. It was 1999. I had my injury, so the ADA had only been around 9 years, and I didn't really know much about it, even though my mother was disabled. Um, we just, I don't know, we just never talked about it as a family, but talked about that, even though, like I said, my mom was disabled. It just never came into our consciousness. So when I became disabled and was at Shepherd Center, they taught us about the ADA, and they were like, if something's inaccessible, you need to say, why ADA, ADA. And so I was under this impression from the rehabilitation center that everything was made accessible for me. So then when I went out into the world and realized that was really exactly the opposite, that very few places were made accessible for me. I was more like, hey, I'm disabled, I have rights, you need to make this accessible so I can get in. And yeah, some people react in different ways. Some people react like, well, they'll like grab my arm and try to pull me in, and as if it was okay to do. So I don't know. It's just weird. Like when you're in a wheelchair, people think they can grab your body and pull you in a place or something.
Right.
Or some people were, like, oh, they would actually have like a different entrance, if it wasn't, which I always hate because I want to have the same experience as everyone. I have this idea working on a documentary and call it like secret entrances. Like they would be like filming the accessible entrances that people create. So yeah, so I would get different reactions. Some people would be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. my landlord won't let me do anything type of thing, to like, oh, I have an entrance, to people that just make it accessible. So, there were different things. And then as a band person that was in the DIY world as a band, that was when I first started realizing how the DIY community that I was a part of for so long didn't think about accessibility. And that was when I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to teach these people that they need to think about this. Even if they can't do it, they should think about how they can do it. And if they can't, that's okay. But I always tell people, be transparent. Transparency isn't about making sure you can fit into what you're supposed to do. It's about letting people know, especially for accessibility, whether your place is accessible. I call it ADA compliant, ADA friendly, or just not accessible. And so I'm encouraging a lot of DIY spaces to include that information, because because disabled people are so different. Like, you and I use wheelchairs, but there's disabled people that can walk and have a cane, but maybe have pain, or, whatever. It's just, there's so many different ways to be a disabled person that you should inform people. And if you are an ADA friendly place, then guess what? Your space is going to be enriched with this whole group of people that may have not even bothered to go to your place, because you're not thinking about them, and they're just going to assume, if there's no information about accessibility, that they won't be able to go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the ADA is such a needed law. But to your point, you described the experience of, coming out of this training that had prepared you, and you were thinking that everything was going to be accessible, and then there was this awful surprise, and so the ADA at the same time can be very weak.
Yeah, and I do say ADA, it's so great that the ADA was passed in the 504, and I'm forgetting the other about education. I'm forgetting what the
Right.
whatever the abbreviation is for that. But yeah, there was, like, in the 70s, like, there was a law passed for disabled kids to be able to have the right to be educated. And then after that, the ADA came in. These are all great laws, and I'm so great they passed, but it still needs to be pushed further for housing. Housing, like the government giving assistance to small businesses to pay for, accessibility costs, like building a ramp or a parking lot that's accessible. So yeah, it just needs to be pushed more to include, just having the ADA is not enough. Just us being able to say, this is not ADA compliant, is not enough. We have to really start making people understand that, including disabled people only enriches your culture even more.
Oh, and by the way, I rarely need my wheelchair,
Oh
but
yeah, I
I was
don't.
only in one after I broke my femur. Um,
Sorry about that.
yeah, well,
Things
um,
happen.
exactly. Um, so how inaccessible was your life before being disabled?
Um, well, as you see, I am a brown skinned woman. I'm Indian. I'm a Indian American, and I'm a woman. And um, I have to say, like, I always felt a little outsider because of being Indian, but it wasn't something that kept me from doing things. So as a woman and an Indian American, I didn't really feel that much inaccessibility. I mean, people would say things and I just, be snarky or whatever. Like, I'd be like, oh no, whatever. And like, even being in the band, I felt like by being in the band and going on stage, I was representing what I was being able to be in the world and play music and be in a band and be part of a community. But yeah, after I became disabled, I just realized like how it made me realize how oppressed and marginalized disabled people are in comparison to people of color, the LGBTQ community, and women. Like, I'm not saying we don't still have work to do for those marginalized people. Of course we do, but disabled people are way, way behind. We can't get work. In education, like high education, it pushes back a lot to give accommodations at work or educational, what do you call those? Educational places, educational, God, I am so sorry. My brain is blind today, but you know what I mean.
Okay.
Educational institutions, and even city council and government things where citizens are supposed to participate. There's a big pushback to giving accommodations, and I don't understand why that's such a pushback. Can I
Yeah.
explain to you? I'm really caffeinated, so can I explain to you why I don't understand this pushback?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So the reason I don't understand this pushback, because I do feel as humans, as a species, we are disabled because we can't fly, we can't swim, we can't hold our breath underwater, we can't tolerate really hot temperatures or cold temperatures. But as humans, we have accommodated ourselves to be able to do all of these things. So, but then we stopped when it got to a certain point, and then technology continued to get more and more and more. And as humans, which I think is a flawed species, by the way, humans don't think like, let's use this technology so this group that's really marginalized disabled people, we can give them the chance to have a job, have a place to live, go to school, all these things. So yeah, that's why I don't understand the pushback of accommodations for disabled.
Yeah, exactly. The ableism of it all. And I'm also thinking about, you mentioned, uh, you know, disability justice and also racial justice and gender justice as well. And I'm thinking about how disability and ableism is intertwined with all of these other systems, that oppress people. And so I think about the intersectionality of it, where, I'm a gay Black man, right? But I'm also disabled.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm experiencing these marginalizations all at the same time. And so it's an interesting thought. Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
That's okay.
but I wanted to point out just the intersectionality of the human experience, and how so often people are um, disabled and also marginalized in other ways at the same time. And so, to your point, within marginalized groups, disabled people can be underrepresented.
Oh yeah, definitely. And of course I know that I just went off on my own tangent there.
No,
But like,
yeah, I love it.
um, yeah, I like, there's a community radio station where I live, and they always are doing fundraisers. And I know the station manager, I'm friends with him, and he wrote, and he's LGBTQ, he's a gay white man, and charged, the head of the radio station. And he went on Facebook to kind of get people to donate. And he's like, we support people of color and the LGBTQ community. And he listed all these marginalized people, but he didn't list disability. And
Mm.
I'm not like a Facebook person where I'm going to be like, I don't do that kind of stuff because I know the person personally, so I can just talk to him. And then it was interesting because Asheville FM is the radio station, and they were doing an inclusive diversity, workshops, which a lot of places were doing. And I told him in the inclusion, I was like, hey, the other day I saw this thing you wrote on Facebook, and I don't call people out on Facebook, but since I'm here with you personally, I'd like to say the first thing you should have listed was disabled people, because all of those other marginalized people can be disabled, but all disabled people aren't necessarily all those marginalized people. So disabled people should be at the top of the list always, because every human will experience disability somehow.
Right, right. Absolutely. And so shifting gears. Oh, and I also wanted to say, we were talking about the ADA and the things that we need. Additionally, we don't even have marriage equality, right?
Oh,
We're
yeah, yeah.
allowed to get married, but we will lose governmental assistance.
So, yeah, it's interesting because, of course, I support the marriage of anyone that's LGBTQ. I support that. But it's different because I feel the right to get married for the LGBTQ community is more of a social, it's more of a social issue. And it is financial because, taxes and having kids and all, that feeds into the financial world. But with disabled people, it's like, if you happen to like severely disabled person like me, I get benefits from the government every month. But if I even got married or got married to another disabled person, my finances would be severely cut. And, and then we have to mention, then there's the other financial limitation where you're not even allowed to have more than $2,000 in your bank. And like, how are you supposed to make it in the world if you can't save some money to be able to buy a house or, anything, like save up for college or, do what everybody else does in life, go on a vacation, like these things. Sometimes you'll need to save more than $2,000 to do those things. So it's just very unfair how there's this financial, I'm going to call it financial bigotry against disabled people. And it annoys me.
Yeah. Tell me more about that financial bigotry. How would you define that?
Well, I would define it that as disabled people, we're trapped in a system, and it's almost like they won't let us leave the system because if you save more than $2,000 or if you get married and lose that money, then you're in poverty. And so then you're a little afraid to do those things because you don't want to be in complete poverty. You want, any human, all humans deserve the right to have a place to live, food to eat, and have a job. The three basic needs in life. And if the financial bigotry exists, then it's hard to get to those three things that other human beings have.
Yeah. And a lot of people probably got legally divorced but stayed together because of this law, because of COVID.
Oh, yeah, totally. Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, my hopes, I don't know, but like I told you, humans are flawed, but my hope is that because of COVID, humans would be like, oh yeah, I got COVID, I'm kind of disabled, we need to push for more rights for disability, but I won't be surprised if it doesn't happen, let's just say. So, which is disappointing, but I mean, I'm honestly surprised we've gotten this far with civil rights as we have.
The struggle is real.
It's totally real. And so, but at the same time, I do try to remind people that the idea of civil rights is so young. It's only like 20 years older than the ADA, really, if you think about it. So the civil rights, like for Black people to be able to vote. I think in 1965, Indians were actually allowed to come to America and vote as well. So like all these civil rights actually made America great, and people aren't really understanding that. And it's very sad to watch what's going on now with the world in general. But we did get there. Humans weren't born with like, let's fight for people's civil rights. Like it's only around 50 years old. So we just have to keep working at it. And 50 years isn't that old. I'm 54. So, you know, I think no, I'm not. Maybe I'm not older. I'm still younger. So it's a little over 54 years old. Maybe it's like 56 years old, but that's not that old. You know, so we shouldn't lose. I don't know, just like when Roe versus Wade was turned over, everybody's like, I'm leaving America. And I'm like, what? You mean you're going to like let all the hard work of all these people that were before you, that, you know, put their lives and bodies on the line to fight for these things for us? And because like a little shifting is happening now, we're going to just move to another country and give up? No, that's not acceptable. We have to continue to fight ourselves. We have to continue what they did, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And making America great is now a slogan that I hate, but
I know. I don't even
yes.
know why I said that. It just came out of my mouth. I
No
hate that.
worries.
But you know, it does make it is an example of what America can do, type of thing, right? So
Mhm, mhm. And so, what do you think you've learned that stays with you on a daily basis from the disability community or from a specific disabled person?
um I love the disabled community because they are like, I've been a part of, you know, I've been part of the Indian community. I'm, you know, in a weird, eccentric band. So I've been part of the punk rock weirdo community. But the disability community is the first community I've been a part of where people forgive each other, help each other, want to be there for each other for real, not in a, you know, not because they're going to get something out of it. And it's something I've learned. I think it's the disabled community actually can teach the world how humans should really be with each other. And I feel like having a disability of any kind actually gives humanity strength instead of weakness. So
Yeah, yeah. And in the COVID era, something that has been on full display,
yeah.
seeing how the disability community has really come together to support each other, you know, as much as we possibly can, over social media and staying connected and, you know, doing work to help disabled people access, you know, vaccines, etc.
Mhm.
So many um, disabled leaders are, you know, have done so many things and are continuing to do those things. And yeah, I totally agree, and I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think, you know, while of course I do, you know, I'm not happy the pandemic happened, of course. It's, you know, it's a
Right,
horrible thing.
absolutely, yeah.
But I think it, you know what, but I think the world is circular, right? We have the good with the bad. And I think the pandemic allowed disabled people to have their time to really start being like, because, you know, the disabled community is comfortable with communicating through Zoom and video chatting and online, because this is like how a lot of disabled people get through
Right.
their day-to-day world. So all of a sudden, I feel that non-disabled people actually benefited or learned from the disabled community, but a lot of people don't even you know, a lot of people that ended up using Zoom or Google Meetup or, you know, all these different things that we've been using to do online events and,
Mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm.
discussions and all these kinds of things. Other people are doing it too, but I'm not sure how much they realize that the disabled community was already using this, and that, I don't know, I feel like we almost put it in play that when the pandemic came, it was really quickly shifted to an online world where we saw our families and all of this through video meetups and things like that. So
Right, right. And it's interesting to see how quickly that shift happened once it was non-disabled people who were seeking accessibility
yeah,
in
exactly.
these ways.
So yeah, like I always say, these are things we as the disabled community have been asking for a really, really long time, like even
Right.
longer than you and I have been alive. So yeah, I always say, so it's really stings to see when non-disabled people needed to figure out how to have access. It moves so quickly. It's sad, it's annoying to watch when you're a
It is.
disabled person.
Truly, truly. And so now for your involvement in the disability community, what do you think are some basic accessible accommodations that you think everyone should provide that's really simple but don't?
Well, first we have the image descriptions, like, so, which I always forget that when I'm doing like online things. I always do it, write it out, which takes me forever to do. Like, oh my God. But because my brain, as you realize today, is a bit spinny winny. So
Hey, I'm
writing
with
the
you.
image description is like my biggest nightmare. But I feel so guilty, like when I'm posting stuff on Instagram, I'm like, oh, like I'm like, oh, I didn't put an image description. I feel so guilty. But sometimes I'll sit and write it all out,
Mhm.
but it takes me hours. So I'm just like, but so image descriptions, of course, are really important. And it's not an expensive thing. It's just simply writing it out or people describing themselves. Captions, I think, are also a very inexpensive thing for workplaces and educational institutions to provide. And during the pandemic, when I would talk to a lot of disabled people going to college, like the the fight they have to go through to get captions when they need it, or even a recording of a class, which is, these are not expensive things. It's just like it's just culturally not accepted for some reason, because most people don't need it. They're like, professors, I've talked to people where professors are like, why do I have to do that?
Will see accommodations as cheating, right? It's bullshit.
Yeah, and I mean, I even had a friend that was, like, because I talk about disability, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. It's kind of a small town, so a lot of people like kind of know about, because I'm all like blah blah blah, talking all the time and going to places and being like, this is not accessible, you should make it accessible. So a lot of people in the town know me, and they support what I do. And this one person said that he knew this person that was, I think she was blind. I'm trying to remember. I think she was blind, because actually my art show, I did a body of work called Words to Live By, which are images I did, and I overlaid image description on it, like in a lower opacity, so the text was embedded over the image. And he's like, yeah, my friend is blind and we're going to go see Jack White, but Jack White doesn't want people to video him or take pictures of him or something. So they didn't allow the phone. And that was an accommodation for this Black woman to be able to, write people, hey, I'm over here, or whatever, like to be able to contact people. So she said, yeah, Jack White won't let me have my phone, so I'm gonna have to turn it off. I wonder if he'll ever realize how ableist he's being. And I just thought that was funny, that she loved Jack White, she wanted to go see the band, but at the same time was like, I hope one day he realizes how he's like oppressing me as a disabled person.
Right.
And so even like a famous celebrity musician, um is oppressing a disabled person because he doesn't want to be filmed. Or
Yeah, and comedians require for phones to be locked up,
yeah, like
like
they're
that.
like, like famous, like, comedians, singers, whatever,
Mhm.
plays. They don't want you to video. They don't want you videoing it because they want to, be able to sell their whatever, put it on Netflix or whatever the heck they're doing. So they want to be able to make all the money from it, which I
Right.
understand, I guess, but you know,
Right. But yeah, it's a problem because here this person is needing their phone, as this essential part of accommodating them in this space, and they can't use their phone, So
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And that fits into like what you're saying about accommodation is like cheating or using, and because a lot of non-disabled people don't really need their phone in that way.
Mhm.
They're addicted to their phone. They are attached to their phone. But if they have to shut their phone off for a comedy show or a music show, it's not gonna, but then I'm also thinking, what if you're a parent and you got some kids at home and you want to make sure your kids are all right? Like, what if there's an emergency? So like, I always like to like point out how disability accommodations can actually accommodate other people too, not only disabled people. And I do
Absolutely.
want to talk about the ableism we're seeing in politics, like in, because since voting's coming up and stuff, I have already voted. In North Carolina, they have early voting. So just to let you know, I've already voted.
Yes.
But Tuesday is coming, November 8th, and we have this election that's, pretty important. And in Pennsylvania, the Fetterman who ran there, he had a stroke, but he has gotten letters from his doctors, all these things. He's even gone and spoke. He even did it a debate. And he messed up word wise a little. And so yeah, now his opponent is like will, like, if it's Dr. Oz, who I think you and I both don't like. And so like they'll do like this commercial I saw. I was like, oh, I hate this. Like he's just like saying, oh, Fetterman says he could do it. He had a stroke, and he's like tying his shoe on the ground and just showing like, I'm a healthy man running, and Fetterman's like had a stroke and he's not healthy like me. And I was just like, this is such manipulation.
Yeah.
And it's ableist manipulation, right? It's like letting people know, making people think that because he had a stroke that he will not be capable of being a senator, which is just not true. I mean, like other disabilities, strokes also can affect a person's ability in a spectrum of ways. And I believe Fetterman is on the low end of the stroke and will definitely be able to do his job. So I hope people vote for him and don't listen. And by the way, our president is also has internal ableism, or maybe he doesn't, or he's a president, so he can't really, he has to be shift powerful or something. I don't know. But yeah, he stutters, which is a neurological disorder. And and the media like makes fun of him when he messes up words. And when I realized he stuttered, I was like, what are we doing? Why are we making fun of him having these gaffes and stuff? It's like he has a neurological disorder, so sometimes he says things wrong, and that's okay. We knew what he was trying to say, and it wasn't like he said the complete, he just flubbed a word here and there, and the
Right.
media like jumps on that hardcore, which I hate.
Right. Like, yeah, like be critical, sure, of what, you know, is being communicated, but not the way that it's being communicated.
Exactly. And and
Yeah,
that's like also downplaying being human, because humans just make mistakes, and it is totally okay.
absolutely. Yeah. And very natural and just part of being human. Just part of being human.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And
Which
the
shout
fact,
out to Judy Human, because she like grabbed that title. So that
yeah.
every time we say being human, we think about her, which is
Mm,
great because she's a great woman, of course.
yeah. And the fact that Biden never mentioned about that during his VP is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Biden's ever talked about being stuttering. The reason I found out he was did stutter was because I don't know, he during the presidential campaign, he met up with a young boy that had a stuttering problem and or I shouldn't say problems, was stuttering.
Mhm.
And he was overcoming it with speech therapy and stuff. So Biden was like, I stuttered too, but I beat it. Which, I also feel is ableist because not everyone can beat their disability. Like I always say, you can't exercise your disability away. It's gonna be there, and you just have to accept it, and I'm not saying not to do things to make your life better, but don't also think you don't have a disability because you were able to overcome it in a certain way, and people don't even realize that you had that disability.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think it was Trump who initially called it out, right? And was making fun of him. And it was this big running thing, right?
Oh, I
And
don't
then
know because I actually don't pay. I'm like I had to, when all that stuff was, I had to disengage because it was too
yeah,
insane for me. And I was like, this is just too insane. I can't take it. So I don't really, I mean, I know I don't like him, Donald Trump, that is, and I don't even like looking at him or hearing him talk. So I just ignored what the only thing I saw was when he was making fun of that reporter that I think had CP and was having some spasms, and he was like making fun of that, which of course I think is horrible as well, because that person was a reporter. He wasn't like wasn't and if you have spasms, that's just also part of being human. Some
absolutely,
humans have it,
exactly.
some humans don't, and that's okay too.
Exactly.
So
And I
that's
mean,
the only, yeah, Trump. I didn't know he actually called Biden out on that stuff, but I'm not surprised about that either. So
right, yeah. He said so many awful, disgusting
yeah,
things
he's just a
about
gross
so
person.
many people. Yeah. But what was interesting to me, though, as well, is that Biden used it as a tool for sympathy, for
Oh
a
yeah, see,
political
and
tool.
like I said, I didn't, when the election was happening, I didn't really
Mhm,
pay 100% attention to everything.
mhm.
But yeah, I could see Biden doing that because he comes from a different time, and and I don't think I think he's happy about the ADA and all these things. So I don't think and I don't, but yeah, I do think Biden is ableist because he just doesn't know any better. And hopefully before he dies, he'll, he'll, he'll understand.
Right, right, right. And to your point, ableism is real old. It's ingrained in
Yeah,
everything,
it's very learned. It's
Yeah,
ableism has existed since the beginning of humanity. So we've wired our and it existed at a time when like when we were in tribal form, when people were born with CP and stuff like that, we didn't know what it was. But we also included those people into our communities or society, whatever you want to call it. They had, even if they couldn't walk or if they were blind or they couldn't speak, they still, like, if they could make bowls, then that's what they would do for that tribe. And they were included, they were given something to do, given a purpose, and included in that tribe. Whereas as humans, as I said, a flawed species, as we started overcoming our disability in the world, we started becoming more and more ableist in the world.
yeah, yeah. And parents are told to mourn when their child is born disabled, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have that much experience. I haven't met a lot of parents with kids, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's kind of like I have noticed, like in my observation of meeting lots of people that were born with their disability, like their parents, they're almost like in this world, and if they can get their kid to be successful at something, whatever that something is, they really, like, almost in a way spoil them. And I feel bad saying spoil because, but I think it doesn't help them in life. It's like when the parents are a little bit too protective and a little bit like, you're the best, you are the best, even though you are, have cerebral palsy and you can't walk and do this stuff, you're still the best because you can do this one thing. And then I think it kind of almost separates them from the world a little bit, where they're not really engaging with other people. The idea of like I notice a lot of younger kids, they're just like, well, why can't I get this job even though they don't have a degree, they didn't go to school, they have no other job, they don't have a work history, so they're like, they're just not giving me the job because I'm disabled. And that could be true. I'm not saying that's not true, but it's like, do you have a BFA? How often did you work? Like, do you have a work history with something like that? Do you have experience? So I always like try to remind people that things like the ADA gives us equality, not special treatment, when sometimes we don't get things because maybe we just don't have the qualifications for it. So we need to really, that's why disabled children, I really encourage, get an education, get as much of a work history as you can. So when you go out with that job, you are just as qualified as that person that's not disabled. And then it's up to the workplace to accommodate for you if you're the better candidate for the job. But then, we all live in this world where let's just not forget, like an employer might have a bigotry towards being disabled, being queer, being Black, all these things. You might not get a job because of all three of those things, but it's on you to prove that, and that's a hard thing to prove. So
Yeah, and to your earlier point, it can be so hard to, you know, get over that initial hurdle, so to speak, of the government mandated poverty, where we have to, many of us can't have over $2,000, and so access to education then becomes so difficult for many of us. And so, yeah, there are definitely cases and situations where, like maybe there is something that we can be doing, to show up more prepared for this opportunity, and at the same time, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it would be great, like in high school, like how you have a counselor. Wouldn't it be great to have a counselor to be like to assist kids, to make them understand, like, hey, you have a disability, there is this bigotry, even though the ADA exists, and you actually have a right to have a job, like you had the right to get this education you got from us. But let's help you get that job, or get that first summer job that's like a intern, or doing something on the whatever the first summer job would be. We it would just be, there's, like I said, there's just so much stuff that needs to be done. And like I've just seen a lot of disabled kids, they graduate high school and then they're just kind of lost. They don't go to college, and they're like, I'm trying to get this job, but they won't give it to me, and it's because I'm disabled. And then I'm like, well, do you know how to do that? No, not really. I'm like, well,
right, yeah, you might need that. Yeah.
you might have to do that. Maybe you should go, and I've even told some younger disabled kids, like, maybe you should go to school. But then there's also like the high school, there's like people that get their actual diploma, and then people that get their certificate of completion, right? And so when you're, a lot of times when a person is disabled and they're not getting their accommodations, the school will be like, oh, we'll just give you a certificate of completion. But then that makes it hard to go to the next step of education, because a lot of colleges won't accept the certificate of completion, right? I don't know. You tell me. I mean, that's what I've just learned. I've learned that during the pandemic, and I was shocked. I was like, what do you mean? And I've met so many people with certificate of completion, and they are smart and they are capable and they really want to go to college or school to for their lives and become counselors for other, be a counselor at a school for disabled kids so they don't have to go through what they went through, and they're just having trouble doing it, and it makes me feel so awful for them. So yeah, if I could talk to disabled parents, I'm like, make sure your kid gets that high school diploma, whatever. You do not let them get that certificate of completion, because it will not help them out to go further,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, you're right. It's a certificate of bullshit.
yeah, it's a certificate of bullshit, and it's just another way disabled people are marginalized. But as a Black person, as a brown person, as a woman, as a queer person, we still would be able to get our education and get our high school diploma and go on with our education, where disabled people have that stop and that halt, and it's really super unfair.
Yeah.
It makes me so angry, I have to tell you.
Yeah, I think, if what is it James Baldwin said? But yeah, I think just being aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Anger
Oh no,
is
you got to. I don't know the James Baldwin. I know what you're talking about. I
Mhm.
forgot. He said so many things, but
So many good things. Yeah, he said something about
like, and
specific to the Black American experience,
mhm,
about how being aware of our oppression is to be in a perpetual state of anger. That
mhm.
paraphrasing, but something to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
effect. Yeah.
But I also think having that anger, using anger as a tool instead of being emotional and just spouting out whatever insanity, because people don't take you seriously. So like, be angry and live in that anger, calm down for a couple of days, and then go out and talk about what makes you angry in this way that other people can digest and understand, and then have sympathy, and then they will be your ally, right? So yeah,
Hopefully, we
so
hope, right? We
yeah,
hope.
we would hope they would be your ally, but and then I have people always like saying, oh, I like what you do, blah blah blah, but they're not really, they're not doing anything to help us. So it's like, it's not like it was for the 504 protest, which is like such a beautiful example of allyship, right? It's like the disabled community went and took over this building, and then the Black Panthers and these lesbian and gay groups all like band together to help them protest, and it was just such a beautiful example of allyship. And it was disabled people that laid that out, right? It was the disabled community that was able to show that example of allyship. I don't know. I do think the Black community, the LGBT community also had allies, but I just think that was just a really great example. And I think it was because disabled people were protesting and they needed help, and they weren't afraid to say, yeah, help us.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, there was there a false story that was made up about someone using a litter box?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was like a gender thing. That was like, yeah, there was I did actually
Yeah,
hear that. I heard that one, because that was like, that must have just gone viral or something. But yeah, like the conservative people are all like, oh, they're letting kids identify as cats. And I'm like, what? And
right.
like, I
Yeah.
think I saw I can't even remember where I saw it. But they were saying that this one classroom did have a litter box, but they actually had a cat. It was for a cat. It wasn't for a human child that identified as a
You
cat.
know,
So it's just
yeah.
like, it's really, yeah, it's really ridiculous. It's like, that's interesting. It's just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No,
As
ridiculous
I
is the
say,
word. Ridiculous is the word.
humans are
Um,
such a horrible species. It's like,
yeah. How has your advocacy evolved over the years?
um, well, like I said, I kind of, like, I was more motivated by the bathroom bill, and because I was just like, well, I've been disabled for, I don't know, at that time, how long was it? I can't remember, 18, 19, 20 years, something like that. But yeah, I just like most bathrooms aren't accessible. Like I go to restaurants and they'll be like, oh, our bathroom's accessible. It's like I can't even shut the door with my wheelchair. And I'm not an extremely large person. I've seen people much larger than me using like wheelchairs that are huge. And I'm like thinking, I'm having trouble getting into this bathroom. Like, how is another disabled person that's larger than me actually going to be able to even do this? And they're
Mhm.
not going to be able to do it. If like I can't do it, they're not going to be able to do it. So like I've been to so many places, venues, restaurants, like where the bathrooms are not accessible. So yeah, when that bathroom bill happened, I was just like, what? All right, you people need to calm down, because this bathroom bill just passed in like this month. And it's like, and the ADA was passed, what was that, 2000? So, it was like, I forget how many years, but 20 something years. And, so I'm like, this law's been around much longer and no one's thinking about accessible bathrooms. And that irritated me. So that's when I started like speaking out. And I just think now I'm kind of, I think the pandemic helped me create what I wanted to do. I did so much stuff during the pandemic because I just love doing things. So I was just like, I'll do this, I'll do that. So I kind of did a lot of stuff. I would do these online panels about chronic pain or books and people talking about their experiences as disabled people. And I would invite, people to come and watch and ask questions or whatever they wanted to do. I opened it to everyone, disabled and non-disabled people. And then I would write, I did some writing, I started doing a puppet show with a puppet called the Frankie and Preepy show that I'm making for kids, but also adults, because if you don't know about something, you're like a kid. So basically. But I also think doing it in that way helps adults understand concepts that are actually very simple. They're not really complicated. So I do this show with a puppet called the Frankie and Preepy show. Then I do a podcast called This Crip Life, where I just like to talk to disabled people and just ask them what they do. And, just like, just so people can understand disabled people are like everybody else. They do things, they have things, they want things, and we need to support them. And so, yeah, I was just doing a lot of stuff during the pandemic. And now, because things have opened up a little more, which still makes me a little uncomfortable. Now the cold season is coming, so I'm, really freaky about that. But because the community did open up a little more, I've been actually doing more things in the community than I have been doing online. And social media just wore me out. I was just like, oh, it's too exhausting. Like when you get in that mode and you're posting, you're like, I have to post again. And I think the image description thing was actually good because it slowed me down. Because I was like, when I started feeling way too guilty about not having image descriptions, I was like, okay, I don't feel like doing the images, so I'm not posting on social media today. So it was kind of good because it made me kind of disconnect from that a little bit. And I'm just kind of been doing things in the community, like doing this like consulting for this clay place. And then I did this symposium for a leaf festival, which is like a thing that happens in Asheville every year. And I guess was the 50th anniversary. So I spoke at a symposium about accessibility in the art of mass gatherings and talking about accessibility and, why it's important and things like that. So yeah, the pandemic really put me into like fast forward, and now I'm kind of like, what do I do now? What do I do now? So I'm just kind of, I have like things I've written that I want to put out into the world. So I think, when the winter comes, my pain will get worse. So I'll just sit and edit those writings a little more and make some more puppet videos and do some more podcasts. So, so.
Yeah, I love that. So many amazing things. Priya, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me.
Of course. Thank you so much. I was so excited when you asked me, and I was like, yes, I totally want to do that. That sounds so exciting. So I'm very happy to do that. And I'm happy I got to sit here and talk to you. And I was curious. I was like, I knew, because I know you're nonverbal. So I was like really curious. Like I was telling my partner, I was like, I'm so excited because he's so cool and I love him so much. And I'm really excited to see how how we're gonna do it. And it was really awesome. So I really appreciate this. And I think it's so important that you're doing this as well, because to show people that being nonverbal doesn't mean you're non-valued. I don't know, whatever.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't
It
come up with
mean
a good saying, but
that's okay.
you know what I
It
mean.
doesn't mean anything other than literally being nonverbal,
It just means it just means you're nonverbal. That's about it.
Exactly. Exactly. But this conversation was so nuanced, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Oh, of course I did.
Yeah,
I-
I appreciate the insights that you provided. And if people wanted to connect with you and support the work that you do, where can they do so?
I do have a website that's DIYable.com, and I should use it more and post things there more, but I don't, and I apologize. I don't know. I don't know what to say, but it's just social media has sucked me in, so and it's just so much easier. So I'm just like, "Ugh," and then I'm like, God, I really got to get to that website, but DIYable.com is there, and you can actually contact me. That's a good way to contact me. I do have a contact there. But if you want to see like what I'm doing mostly, like the perspective, because I love the idea of cripping community and centering disability. I just think we need so I kind of like give these philosophical ideas of my experiences and why cripping community and centering disability, like what would the world look like if we did things like that. So you would find that on my Instagram. And the Frankie and Pre P I have on my Instagram, but I started that because my friend was like, you need to do TikTok. And I was like, all right. And so I was like, what do I do? And then I was like, I'm going to talk to a puppet. So that's what I did. I decided to talk to a puppet, and that's what I did. So I do that on TikTok. That's pretty much what I do on TikTok is the puppet video, but it's on Instagram and I think YouTube too. So I have all those things, and you can like contact and look and do it all through these these different things that are available. However you want to do it is up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone check Priya's stuff out. I will make sure to share everything in my description below.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I'm Sean Gold. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment all your thoughts, and subscribe. I'll see you next time on another episode of Crippled by Culture.